process. I'm interested particularly or kind of anything you have to say, whether it's concrete or not, about how boxing sort of infiltrated, because it seems like it's specific and yet not obvious. So I'm curious about that.
And you mean too in this not obvious how things all sort of come together?
Well, if you're working with this, beginning with the title in mind, how sort of, if you have any more words on your process of where your mind was going and when boxing was sort of inserted.
I think on, and I'm just thinking this out loud for the first time. I think that the show before this was called On Sugar Mountain Up Shit Creek, and it, as I said, it was toddlers and babies, and it was the first time I introduced the hypertrichosis condition, and there were normal children, and there were the hypertrichosis children, and there was guns. So that was the first time I actually had an object of violence or an object of defense. And kind of moving into the next phase and thinking about boxing, I like the idea that it was a little bit more choreographed and more civilized, and yet the brutality could be more extreme. And for me, it seemed also like the next stage of thinking about socialization. So for me, a lot of this is about how children are socialized, or we are socialized to behave, pushing back our feral behavior. And so boxing seemed like it was supposed to be this graceful, civilized sport, but it was the most aggressive and brutal on certain levels. And yet with the soft gloves, I think that was kind of my next, how I kind of jumped into that. I also liked the spectacle of it, which was a little bit more intentional and created a sort of theatrical stage and connected to the histrionics with the Y, if that helps at all. And then, as I said, it's hard for me on a certain level, especially as a visual artist, not that visual artists shouldn't be able to talk about their work, and I give a great lecture about my work when I'm prepared for it. But I feel like a lot of my process is that I start to make connections and they build upon each other. And that's why it's so exciting to hear that I was onto something with, so I feel like the boxing, I could give you a stage, a lineage of visuals and readings that I was doing that got to this point, but the end result was I was really looking for something that could be the high and low of glamour and brutality, of civilized and something that is base. The idea that it starts with a simple ring, or now it has chandeliers and high ticket value. I like this contrast, and I also really like the idea that in the end nobody's supposed to get hurt. It's all about defensiveness. So I don't know if that helps.
It does. If you have any, you talk about your work in a very somewhat intellectual way, thinking it through. I'm interested in your personal sort of, is there any sort of, in the way that words come, is there any sort of maybe unformulated but kind of personal feelings that have, brought sort of, sounds like the larger subjects of your work, where they're coming into play?
I think as I said, it's just like this idea of really trying to figure out how we as a society decide who we're going to take care of, who we protect, and who we fear. And I think that, even with the boxing, I think that when I was dealing more with the childhood things, it was really kind of clear, and using the aesthetic of cuteness, it's like, well, if something's smaller than you, and something has big eyes, and there's a mothering instinct, then we take care of it. And if something's bigger than you, or it starts to become your own likeness, which is where the boxing kind of came, it's like, then how do we react? And also, I was really interested, and I think Andy starts to do a really amazing job in the essay, of all of the research from the very beginning is societal and racial, and boxing pulls all of that into it too. And so without talking about it, and very much talking about it because of the history. And so I was really intentionally and unintentionally stumbling on these things, and boxing started to do that as well.
I think boxing, its history is the history of the outclass and the in-class
Very much
through
so.
time.
And how women are the ones that are the last sort of minority that's
Uh-huh.
starting to, which is sort of interesting now.
And terrible, but
I would say though, Margaret, you have a persona. I would use that word, a persona, the pugilist.
In this show.
Yeah. And so maybe for each of your shows through time, you've had a similar sort of, or is this the first
No,
time it's
this is
been
the
like
first
a
time.
character as much?
Yeah.
I'm curious to know, because your training is a very process-oriented background, so, and obviously this work requires many steps from the beginning to the finished product. So I'm wondering what came out for you that you weren't expecting? What parts of your subconscious, if anything, came out through the process of making this work?
Well, I think before you finished that, I was like, this entire show, like this for me, and I don't know how you guys would feel, but looking at my previous work, this is a huge jump. It felt like a jump in terms of, for the first time formally, and it's the first time I feel like good about my work. And I think it's not that I not felt good about the work in the past, but I've never felt like it conveyed what I intended, and the conversations that came out of it was always really fighting against what I was trying to talk about, or there was too much attention being paid to things that I didn't really want to focus on. And this is the first time I feel like the work and the ideas are actually holding themselves together. And then, just in terms of the work, because Mary Michael knows, like, I went to an MFA program in ceramics, which is also kind of interesting that there's not a single ceramic piece in the show. Although there was supposed to be this porcelain speed bag that I made 10 versions of, and I just never felt good about it enough to put it in the show. But I think that there's a relationship that I learned from the clay community, which is why I still love it and I teach it, is this idea of really kind of like honing in and focusing and obsessing, and I do that with the ideas as well, which is why I get overwhelmed when I try to, in the way that branch is like, if you really look at it, it's